Hello and welcome to the Ecomodernist channel live. I'm Carl Pauls. I'm here with Gabe Ignitti, Chris Bergen, and Greg Vezina, our special guest. Greg has spent over 40 years developing ammonia and other clean hydrogen energy technologies. He once drove a 1981 ammonia-powered Chevrolet Impala across Canada, arriving at Parliament on Constitution Day, November 5th, 1981. He has completed multiple research projects on this topic and recently co-authored the book Ammonia Energy Technologies. Welcome to the program, Greg.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So, what can you tell us about this ammonia-powered engine technology?
Okay, let's try and make a very long story as short as we can. Ammonia's chemical formula is NH3, which means it has one nitrogen molecule and one hydrogen molecule. In fact, you can store about 1.5 times more hydrogen in ammonia than you actually can when you liquefy hydrogen. Ammonia is the easy way to store hydrogen. The problem with ammonia is that it's not flammable. Its flammability limit is very narrow, okay? So the concept of using ammonia as a fuel actually predates the internal combustion engine. There was an ammonia streetcar and ammonia engines invented in the 1890s. There was an ammonia streetcar that ran in New Orleans. In the 30s, there were a few ammonia cars that were built. During the Second World War, the Germans cut off the diesel supply to use for their purposes. And in Belgium, they ran 12 buses in Brussels on ammonia from 1944 to 1946. Rochester University he's got students, and they entered a car, an ammonia car. They converted a BMW Isetta, the little wee thing, to ammonia. And they entered in the Urban Car Challenge, and they came second. Big surprise. No one ever heard anything about it again. Anyway, all these videos are on our website at nh3fuel.com or hydrofuel.com. Click on news and videos, and they're all there. We spent over $1 million of $1.5 million at Colorado State making our commercial scale prototype, which will be available next month. What it does is makes ammonia using gold nanoparticles at over 90% efficient, instead of the Haber synthesis method at 65% efficient. And this does this at end use, and it's interruptible. So it can use interruptible power, which Haber can't use. So all of a sudden, we have a wonderful technology for making ammonia for farmers and agricultural use, but also for anybody that can make hydrogen from any way, but in particular for renewables. Because if you can't use hydrogen the minute you make it, if you have to start storing it or transporting it, the numbers go 10 times as high as the cost of ammonia. That technology is going to be commercially demonstrated next year. In the meantime, the University of Toronto, I worked with Dr. Ozen there for the last decade, off and on. One of the brightest men in the world. He and I have had a discussion over the last decade because he thinks he can make free carbon fuel from sunlight, essentially. He calls me and says, okay, I mean, I can make hydrogen from carbon and not even pollute, but they don't get it. And I said, what? And he said, I can make hydrogen from anything that contains hydrogen, but not make a carbon pollution. I take all the carbon and make nano, make carbon fiber, make carbon black. So now we have zero carbon coal. But he says, I'm tired and I want to retire. I said, I'll give you $1 million if you go back to work. And we signed an agreement, and he went back to work, and we filed 6 patents already. A 7th is coming. So now we have the ability to make and store hydrogen in ammonia at end use at small scale from any feedstock. Now we have the ability to not only refine hydrocarbons without using hydrocarbons. Remember, 80% of all chemicals, including oil and gas, are refined using thermal energy heat from hydrocarbons. So this technology uses sunlight, and it solves the problem of the sun going down because you store the sunlight in battery and it runs on LEDs. So now you're 24/7. Solves the problem with solar. So now you're taking light, you're cracking hydrogen and carbon. You can crack water into hydrogen and oxygen, cheaper and efficient, more efficient than electrolysis could ever be. You can split anything that contains carbon or hydrogen, nitrogen, or set atom into its constituents. So now you can refine hydrocarbons zero emission, and this is the holy grail. We'll make hydrogen from solar energy, and we'll refine our oil and gas, and there won't be any pollution. We can eliminate the carbon emissions entirely from the upstream refining, and at end use, there's going to be a little bit of emissions during distribution, but hey, who cares? It's nothing. At end use, you crack the carbon and hydrogen out before you burn it in an engine. And now the carbon comes out in a powder, and the powder is actually worth something. And you have zero emission hydrocarbons. And this is a very big deal, not only because it allows us to use any carbon feedstock, and in many cases, they are a cost item, waste, wood waste, biomass, all these other things, to turn them into a profit. We've got a clean fuels policy, but the only clean fuels are carbon fuels. And what are they? They're ethanol. But wait a minute, ethanol only contains 75% of the energy that was in the fertilizer and diesel fuel it took to make it. The shortest answer I could give you.
Right. I love it. We've got some nuclear startups that have the same perspective. They say, just lower the cost enough and eventually it will beat fossil fuels. And I love to see that perspective in non-carbon or carbon-free fuels. You've made some amazing progress. You mentioned a few major steps. That first step, working on a micro ammonia prototype that converts, if I understand you correctly, it extracts the hydrogen from another hydrocarbon and builds an ammonia molecule in a way that's 90% energy efficient. Is that right?
Yeah. Let me just slightly correct you.
Right.
It takes hydrogen made from anything and mixes it with nitrogen from air to make ammonia. But the ammonia synthesis technologies, TRL level 7 and 8, it's going to be market ready in a year. Whereas the hydrocarbon cracking and other light technologies are 2, 3, 4 years out. And to be honest, the biggest adapters of light to hydrogen from carbon is going to be the biggest industries. If you got a $5 billion plant and you can knock off $1.5 billion worth of that facility and drop something in at a third of the cost that cuts your emissions to zero, who's going to be my customer? No, you don't have time to put these on trucks yet, sir. So our problem is that people don't get how big the energy industry is. This is a $10 trillion a year business. The total global economy is $100 trillion. These people have $2 quadrillion invested in their infrastructure over 100 years. So let's just do some math here, because geez, math is hard. So we'll take our base load, we'll take our amount of energy. 80% of energy is liquid fuels. By being able to use all of your resources internally, including your negative input resources, your human waste, your animal waste, agriculture waste, construction waste, all this stuff that costs us $200, $300 a ton to deal with. So again, bottom line is to use the technologies that we have to replace negative cost inputs with positive cash flow. And there it is.
All right. I see a question from Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to have a quick question just on the power density and the ease of use. How does ammonia compare?
Ammonia has net about 40% of the energy that diesel would have. However, when you burn ammonia in a diesel engine, or even a gasoline engine, it burns at about 20% more efficiency. And the reason is you don't have as much waste heat. And there's where 60% or more of all your energy in an internal combustion goes. When you burn ammonia in pure oxygen, that diesel engine is now 50% more efficient. And interestingly enough, unlike when you burn anything in air, which is 78% nitrogen, you get nitrous oxide. Even hydrogen burned in air creates NOx. When you burn ammonia and oxygen, there's no NOx. You get N2, which is pretty amazing. But if you've got an electrolysis plant or a light plant that's splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen, you're making ammonia, you got the oxygen. I mean, you build one of these plants beside every gas plant, and now you got the oxygen and the hydrogen, and you're cracking hydrogen out of natural gas, and you're piling carbon on the ground, and you're peak loading from renewables. I mean, so the flexibility is amazing. So ammonia just has, less than half the energy, but it is more efficient. You can ship almost twice as much hydrogen in ammonia in a pipeline than you can hydrogen in that oil or gas. And interestingly enough, there's a lot of talk of an experimentation with adding hydrogen to existing lines. And there's some research coming out to say this is a very dangerous thing to do, because you will have hydrogen leakage no matter what you do, and you will have metal embrittlement. And the problem with adding hydrogen to a line when you get embrittlement is it doesn't fail at the ejection point. That hydrogen separates out all the way through that line. So when that line fails, it's catastrophic, and the entire line is gone. Whereas you can pump ammonia in existing lines at lower pressure at less cost with less energy with minor modification. And again, there are ammonia pipelines in Europe, in Russia, and of course in the US from the Gulf Coast up to the Midwest. So the short answer to your question is ammonia has less energy, but it can be utilized better, and it can be utilized better than hydrocarbons. And the safety and handling reputation of ammonia per ton mile over the last 100 years, 10 times, 100 times better than any hydrocarbon. The reason? Won't blow up. It's interesting that Lloyd's of London will insure anything running on ammonia worldwide for the same price as what they insure for hydrocarbon.
That's good to know.
So they've done the risk.
Yeah.
And there will be more injuries from a mass use of ammonians. Well, there'll be a lot less deaths. And that's the trade-off.
So what I'm hearing is that there is a transition phase. We're so inundated with hydrocarbons and the fossil fuel industry, it is going to be extraordinarily difficult. And even despite our environmental aspirations, we see a lot of things like California's cap and trade, where polluters are being paid to continue to pollute with the cap and trade. You have a budget of carbon credits, and if you reduce the amount that you pollute from last year, you get a bonus. You get to sell those credits. Are your business people seeing an opportunity here? Are you seeing the opportunity to take in those feedstock and capture the carbon for that massive reduction in carbon pollution?
We'll qualify for all these credits in the United States. But by the time we get the carbon tech out, that will collapse the carbon credit. It'll wipe it out.
Yeah.
Because industry will ask for $1 trillion in credits, please. Remember, these credits are paid out over a period of time. So industry will say, okay, we can reduce our global carbon output in 10 years by 25%. Can we have our $25 trillion in credits, please? And the politicians will say no more carbon credit. But you're right that there is going to be a transition, but the transition is going to be easier than a lot of us think. But we're not getting off oil and gas, boys and girls, for 50 years. And China's not going to stop burning coal for 50 years. But China will burn coal with ammonia in the combustion, which will reduce, and then ammonia in the flue gas, which will also reduce. So again, the big numbers are in big users. Marine transport, power generation, large fleet transport, particularly in dedicated use. For example, all the ports that have dedicated fleets of trucks. California, it's $250 a day to run your diesel truck. Well, every one of those trucks could run on ammonia quickly. But once you get on the public roadway and want to convert to the family car, then you suffer from what I would call a hybrid Hindenburg Ford Pinto syndrome. Someone's going to screw up, because somebody always screws up. because no one has ever engineered anything ever that is fail safe and will never fail or won't get broken in an accident, or ever has never been a human being invented that didn't make a mistake. So someone's going to screw up. So you're right. Where do you go? You go where they got ammonia. They've used ammonia for 50 or 100 years. The safety is there. The training is there. This is the big problem they're having with battery vehicles and fleets and buses. There's nobody knows how to fix these things. They got no training, no staff, no expertise. So no, you got to go to dedicated fleet use off-road. But the best uses are remote uses, places where they have the most expensive electricity. And you're right, you can repurpose existing infrastructure cheaper than you can build new. Agriculture is one of the best examples. The most expensive electricity and the most expensive fuel is called the last mile. And to build a grid out to all these hog farms in the middle of nowhere, and this farm is getting off diesel and it's getting off this, and so you got to build 3 of those lines to get to that. Okay, no, it's not going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. Those farms will make their own ammonia, they'll make their own fertilizer, they'll make their own fuel, and they will send electricity back to the grid. Instead of the last mile being the most expensive electricity there is, it'll be the cheapest electricity. Then the farmers empty it all in 3 weeks in the spring, and they fill it up again, and farmers empty it all 3 weeks in the fall. But if they could use that every 3 weeks, you could increase the global distribution of ammonia by 20 times. 20 times. Do you know what a savings that is in infrastructure and energy distribution costs? Now, in the real world, in the world we want to get to, those feedstocks are green, even if they come from a hydrocarbon, because we'll crack the hydrogen out of it, take that carbon commodity, powder, carbon black, carbon fiber, whatever it is, it's now a profit. So in the short term, we don't give a shit, pardon my language, where the hydrogen comes from. We want this technology implemented and starting to be utilized so that when the newer technologies come, they can get implemented right away. We don't have to start from scratch, okay? But the ultimate goal is to combine the two technologies, to combine the micro ammonia production technology with using the existing hydrocarbon infrastructure. Keep your natural gas line, Mr. Farmer. We'll take that gas, we'll make ammonia out of it, we'll pay you for the carbon. And I'll give you one more real quick, grade 5 math story on battery vehicles. We're supposed to have, by 2035, no combustion engines. Okay, that's 12 years. Okay, well, right now we produce 70 million vehicles a year. The global supply of lithium today and planned for at least the next decade will produce 10 million vehicles a year. Okay, so 2035, we're going to produce 120 million vehicles, batteries. But in the meantime, we're going to produce 1 billion more internal combustion engines to add to the 3 billion internal combustion engine vehicles we have. There ain't enough lithium. There isn't enough cobalt. So please explain to me how we'll have no internal combustion engines in 2025. I don't know what math it works with. Green math works with.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's still got your electricity costs, but if your electricity is, between 2 and 8 cents kilowatt, depending on what your subsidy was to get it, you're down to under $300 a ton for ammonia. You're under $3 a kilo for hydrogen. So now you qualify for carbon credits because you just went to zero emission. That's why I said the carbon market's going to last about 5 seconds as soon as we can produce carbon emission-free carbon.
Amazing. All right. Greg, it was absolutely wonderful having you on. What are your closing thoughts?
I would say that what we really need to do, every one of us, in our daily lives is vote with our wallets. We need to let consumerism work for us. We need to buy those products that cost a little bit more, that have a genuine societal benefit. And we need to use the power of social media and influencers and stuff like that to build this knowledge. consumer power will work if enough of us start using it. The second thing I'd say again is to let industry realize that it's not all about short-term profits, that these companies that are doing that are going to destroy themselves.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Greg Vezina, for introducing us to the future of the ammonia fuel economy. And again, as usual, remember, emissions first, peace and justice will follow.
Please subscribe to us on YouTube, Ecomodernist channel. Also to subscribe to us on Twitter and Facebook, Ecomodernist Society of North America.
And online at https://esna.earth.